Okay, good evening. This is the Anderson Report. Today is Monday, August 10th. A action-packed start to the week. A lot of very vibrant rotation in the market today. We're going to get into it in just a minute. And see the S&P pushing ever closer to that all-time high. The S&P went out at 3360, just over 3360. That's less than 1% from its old all-time high of 3386 from February 19th. It's 26 points, maybe 27 points. The S&P was only up 0.3% today, only up 9 points, but still it's been up 5 or 6 days in a row. I would typically think that when you're pushing up against potential resistance of an old all-time high, hi Jen, thank you for joining us, that you would have a lot of resistance at the first try. You remember when NASDAQ got to 10,000, the day after it crossed 10,000, it went down 5% the next day. We had a big sell-off. A few weeks later, it got above 10,000 a couple of times. We had another sell-off. And the third time it went through 10,000, never really looked back. It's now 10% higher than that. But we will see how the S&P reacts if it gets right to that 3386 level. It went out at 3360. Okay, so this is the Anderson Report. This is my YouTube channel. I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you are a first-time watcher and you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to the channel. If you want notifications on when the next broadcast might be, you can hit the little bell next to the red subscribe bar, and you will get notifications on when our next broadcast will be. Typically, they are at 7 p.m., Monday through Thursday, occasionally on Friday. Once in a while, I will do a weekend review or a preview the week ahead on the weekend. And I'm about 3 weeks into this, still just tweaking a little bit the best format. I know there's no perfect time for everyone, but it is always watchable on replay on YouTube. And you can also watch it on Periscope. My Periscope channel is TJ Anderson 12. My Twitter handle is TJ Anderson 1. When I am at my assigned location, I typically am relatively active tweeting on stock market developments, economic news, the whole interplay of any other geopolitical, eco-political news that we may get with the market and how the market is reacting to it. So again, thank you all for joining us. So what we had today basically was a very vibrant rotation in the stock market out of a lot of what we have called the big mega cap tech hyper growth names that have been fueling the internet traffic trade, that have just had a monstrous move, not only year to date, but off the March lows, and frankly, over the last 2 to 3 years. You know the names of them all: Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Netflix, Apple, I'm leaving one, Amazon. So these stocks have just been incredible. They've been probably beneficiaries of the shutdown. And when I say they've been driving the internet traffic trade, that's a combination of a tremendous amount of people working from home, either on conference calls with their colleagues, with customers, et cetera, and or a tremendous amount of people doing a lot more streaming of entertainment type events from home that they had been doing. Netflix subscriber numbers for the second quarter were just absolutely through the charts with 10 million new uh, subscribers. So what we had today, and we have mentioned the last few days that the Nasdaq seems to be stalling a little bit. Now it's only stalling a little bit because it's just had a little bit of a parabolic move when it got through 10,000 the third time. It went right to 10,800, backed off, backed off, backed off, backed off, closed as high as 11,100, uh, pulled back a little bit on Friday, pulled back a little bit today, only down 0.4%. So the NASDAQ was down 40 points. It closed at 11,968. But the Dow Jones Industrials was up 358 points today. It was up right out of the chute. It maybe stalled a little bit around 10:30, between 10:30 and 11 o'clock, but then it got going and it just didn't really pause. And you'll see a little bit later, just a tremendous amount. When I looked at the new 52-week high list, it was striking how many cyclicals and industrial names are on the 52-week high list, which means that those individual stocks are higher than they were, higher than any point they've been in the last year, and higher than they were when we put in the highs in February. So the highs in February for the S&P were 33.86. We're at 33.60. So we're very, very, very close to those levels. We're less than 1% away. One very strong day in the market and the S&P could be in new high territory. In fact, uh, at the end of last week, the S&P put in its second highest weekly close ever. Second only to the week that ended on a Friday a couple days before February 19th, when it put in its all-time high, which that day obviously was not on a Friday, or that would have been a weekly high also. But the Dow, even with the 358 point rise today, up over 1.25%, went out at 27,790. Now the old all-time high for the Dow is 29,550 something. So we are still, we're going to call it 1,750 points, 1,800 points on the Dow away from the Dow hitting a new all-time high. But in a little bit, when we look at the new 52-week highs, boy, there's a lot of industrials and a lot of cyclical names on that list. So that was the Dow, up 358 points, over 1%, strong all day long. FedEx, Lowe's, Home Depot, Boeing had a nice day, certainly nowhere near an all-time high, but it was up. It had a strong day. The financials acted well. That's JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. So look, the Dow had been behind most in July. Its gains in July were less than half of what the S&P and the Nasdaq gained, but it's catching up in August, that's for sure. So the S&P up 0.3%. We mentioned that. The Dow down for the Nasdaq down 40 points. Look, the Nasdaq, these stocks are due for a breather. I mean, the Nasdaq was up coming into this week after Friday. The Nasdaq Composite was up 9.3% quarter to date. That's with its gain in July and the first week in August. It cannot continue to post those type of numbers on a weekly or monthly basis through the rest of the year, especially given the fact that it gained about 17 or 18% in the first half of the year. And so here's the other real bright spot in the market: the Russell 2000 up 15 points, 1%, 1584.67, well above its 200-day moving average. It's been above it for a month. It's impressive. Above its June highs, which were like 1535 ish. The advanced declines were decent. 2.5 to 1. Positive by, let's say, a little bit less than 2.5 to 1 on the advanced decline. On NASDAQ, not quite as strong. There were 3 gainers for every 2 decliners. Look, the growth names in NASDAQ, even if they're smaller cap names and not the big in the top on the top 10 list, the growth names are, there's some reallocation going on, and the big dough managers are taking some gains in the stocks that they have outsized gains in. They're not selling them all. They're not selling all their Microsoft or all their Apple computer or all of these stocks in this big tech mega growth space, because those stocks are still going to have very good growth and very good earnings going forward. But they just can't have the price appreciation at the same rate that they've had for the first 7 months of the year. Okay. And off the March lows. So these big dough managers are being very strategic. They're peeling back some of their gains in those names. And even though they might be decreasing the amount of shares that they own in 5 or 6 of the biggest high flying names, on a market cap basis, because the price of those stocks has increased so much that they may still have as much market value in those names. So they don't want to get wildly overrated, because all of a sudden, then if you get a 5 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10% correction in NASDAQ, and then then they've got a rough stretch of performance to deal with for a couple of months. So, but they're putting some money into what they think has not just underperformed, because you don't want to buy underperforming stocks that are sick, but they're putting little bit more money into some cyclicals and into some industrials and into some stocks, maybe a little bit in energy, maybe a little bit in the financials. Those are 2 sectors that are really going to have to convince people they're for real. But they're looking to get some exposure to sectors of the market that represent sectors of the economy that will catch pretty good action if we're able to make that next move higher on the economic expansion coming out of the the shutdown, the big decline, the down 32 GDP number from the second quarter. Okay. So look, crude oil had a nice day. $42, up 2%. Very encouraging to see it hold 40. Now it's held 41 for a couple times. We'll mention gold. It's been a hot topic for the last 3 weeks. It was up a little bit. It went out at like $20.35 to 2,035. 2,035 a troy ounce for gold, up about $8. It still seems to have a lot of interest. Silver had a stronger day on a percentage basis. It was up about 5%, closed above 29. I think that's the first close for silver above 29. Although even when the contract stops trading, it still trades on Globex, and it's probably trading right now. I did not look after a little bit, after 4:30 or so. It was up a buck and a half. That was a 5% move for silver. It's at 29. Let's see how silver acts if it starts to move close to the $30 level. I rarely mention copper. It caught my eye today. It was up 2.6%. I think that's similar to what we've seen in a lot of interest in a lot of these cyclical names. Maybe some more construction around the globe. Um, it's not a real high level for copper, but it it acted well the last couple of weeks. Nothing exuberant, but to see it up 2.6% on a day when the cyclicals and the material stocks are acting well, it caught my eye a little bit. So the sectors today, even though Nasdaq didn't really get crushed, it only looked weak comparison to the Dow, which was on fire all day long, and Nasdaq never got out of negative territory. So it it was like trailing by the Dow by like 2% most of the day. Finished maybe like 1.8% less than the Dow because it had about a 4.5% decline for Nasdaq. The Dow had over like a 1.3% gain. But these big communication services, info technology, those are the two S&P sectors that are really driving the internet traffic trade. Those are the categories that you find, those, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. They were down like maybe 0.5%, third of a percent. They certainly didn't get crushed, but there's not people adding to positions in those sectors right now. In fact, there's people lightening up a little bit. Certainly not selling aggressively, but lightening up a little bit. So energy was up 3%. That's positive. Energies have been having this sawtooth activity. Okay, it'll go up. It'll have a really good week where it's up 5% one week. And next week it'll be down 3.5%. It'll be up 3% today as it was. Tomorrow it might be down 1.5%. All these energy companies just reported horrendous second quarter earnings. Their revenues were down anywhere from 60 to 65%, most of them. And they've got to really, it's going to be a show me type attitude for investors to really make serious commitments to the sector if they're not dedicated energy investors. Industrials up 2.4%. Materials up 1%. Materials, definitely cyclical names. Financials up 0.6%. I think the regional banks might have acted a little bit better than the big classic money center banks. Although the money center banks got maybe a little bit of sponsorship from Buffett's annual meeting where he took some write downs on some bad positions that he had. He bought back $5 billion worth of Berkshire Hathaway stock, which is a little bit of an endorsement for the market because Berkshire Hathaway is, it's not really a mutual fund, but you could say it kind of is like a mutual fund because they own big chunks of he's always liked the big US multinational franchises. And then other such special situations like, a mattress company that he's familiar with in Omaha and See's Candies and things like that. So he took a big write down, had some bad hits in the airline sector, still owns a ton of Apple Computer. And I believe he added significantly to his Bank of America position. So that may have given a little bit of sponsorship to the big banks. Now, one other sector that I did not mention that I really want to. I mentioned it yesterday. I'm going to start talking about a little bit more. The Dow Jones Transportation Average. I think it gained between 2.5% and 3% on Friday. It gained 2.7% today. It had been struggling for most of the month of July at the 10,000 resistance level, which was also its high in early June when we had that big spike up in the market in early June that failed badly. The Dow Jones Transportation Average went through that pretty aggressively a week ago. the beginning of August. It's now at 10,890. It's up 8.5% in 2 days. Definitely the railroad stocks have been acting well. UPS has been acting tremendous, had great earnings, announced surcharges on fees. Hey, Neil, thank you for joining us. So the transports have had a great beginning of um, August, up 8.5% the last 5 days. And one very encouraging piece of data, not just for the transports and the airlines, because of course the airlines are a big portion of the transportation index. And clearly the airlines were hit just mercilessly during the shutdown for obvious reasons. Planes weren't flying, and where they were flying, they were flying. I flew in early May on a couple of routes that would have typically had big planes, and they had planes where the seating was like 2 by 2, and they held about between 100 and 110 people. So there, I think I still remember United Airlines will be probably ingrained in my head for years. United Airlines revenues in the second quarter down 87%. But today, and this data point was either for today or for Sunday. I don't have clarification on it yet. But the TSA reported its highest number of people going through TSA checkpoints at airports since early March. So the initial 15 days to stop the spread came out over the weekend, right in the middle of March, March 14, 15. I think March 16th was a Monday. So probably this TSA number, they had over 800,000 people go through TSA checkpoints. And they said today, but they might have meant Sunday. I'm not really sure. It's not really relevant. The relevant thing is that's the highest number of people going through TSA checkpoints in one day than they have had since probably that second week in March before we before we really started the shutdown. So even though we've had big flare-ups in some parts of the country, some hot zones, southeast Florida, parts of Texas, Arizona, mainly the Phoenix area, California, probably a few others. People are flying again. That's very positive. Okay. Nowhere near what they were. I think that when things were, full capacity, I think the TSA, I think that number runs about 2.5 million a day. Okay. I'm not sure on that, but so if we're at 800,000, that means that maybe for one day, we're close to a third, a little bit less than a third, 30%, high 20s. We're close to a third of where we were with the airlines. And that's probably more than some people would expect. But it shows me that people are flying again. It'll be very interesting to track that number the remainder of this week to see if it goes up past that 800,000 level that it hit today. It might have been 830, 840. I'm not sure. Maybe you can get to 1 million a day. That would be a very positive sign for the economy. So we'll have to watch that going forward. Look, the airlines have poked their head up a little bit. They had a ridiculous move in early June. You had this crazy move. One or two of them filed bankruptcy. They bought them like crazy. It was the same period of time that Hertz went from $1 to $4, even though they filed bankruptcy. American Airlines went up into a cloud of people saying, well, they're running this cash. Airlines run massive cash drains when people aren't flying. And the airlines got, they had this big move up. American Airlines got up to 44. I think it went back down to 20 or a little bit lower. But the airlines have been poking their head up a little bit. we'll see if there's more in that move as the week works on. So one other interesting tidbit for today, article in the Wall Street Journal late in the day, the home building index. Now this is a sub, there are 11 industry sectors in the S&P universe, and a lot of those have sub indexes underneath there. I don't know which big index uh, the home builders are part of. I could guess, but I'm not going to. But the home building sub industry index is up 23% year to date. It's at its highest level in 15 years. Clearly, the home building stocks have been on fire. A lot of them are trading at near at or very close to 52-week highs, and almost anything related to home building, home furnishing, home additions, etc., from either people saying, look, if I'm going to be working from home, I'm going to put some money into a home office. I'm going to, well, maybe we're not going to be going out as much. We're going to put some money into the backyard. Maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll just do everything we can to make the house as nice as we possibly can so that, we're going to be spending a lot more time in and around the house on the property. It's nicer. Okay. If we're not going to fly somewhere, take a vacation, we'll spend that money on the house instead. So anything related to home buying, home fixing up, etc., has been very, very strong. Home Depot, Lowe's at or near 52-week highs. A lot of building products stocks, some appliance uh, companies, and of course the home builders. And I'm not really sure about I don't know how many publicly traded realtors there are, but I would think their business is picking up. Now, the other thing that really jumped out at me, just looking at a couple of things in the chat here, APHA. Have you ever looked at them? Julu, I am not familiar with APHA. If you have a corporate name, I could look it up real quick. Bullish breakout. And the only other thing I would tell you is, just as a point of compliance, I do work for a broker dealer. I am not a registered analyst. I really have to be very careful about commenting on individual stocks. It's much easier for me to talk about sectors and market averages in general, because nothing that I say can be interpreted as a buy or sell endorsement or suggestion of individual stocks, because I am not a registered stock analyst. So I can say that, look, Apple Computer had great earnings and they're going to split their stock 4-for-1, but I'm not saying whether or not I think you should buy or sell the stock. But I can tell you that there are a lot of stocks on the 52-week high list today that really I thought were very interesting. A lot of names that I would not expect to see on the list. And I'm just going to go through them real quickly. Some of these names you might know, some of them you might not know. American Waterworks kind of makes sense to me. Best Buy. I remember when Best Buy 10, 11 years ago was almost bankrupt. When Circuit City filed bankruptcy, everybody thought that Best Buy was the next one. Now they do sell appliances, not just stereo equipment and phones and electronics. They do sell appliances, and some really good appliances, as good as what you would get at other appliance retailers. Not that I'm promoting Best Buy, but they're at a 52-week high. And I don't know that they do a lot of business online. Big Lots, a 52-week high. I love Big Lots. I love going into Big Lots, not the stock. I can't comment on the stock. So, a couple of railroad stocks: Canadian Rail, Canadian Pacific Rail, uh, Carrier Global, that's the air conditioning company that used to be part of United Technologies. Cummins Engine, that is a hardcore cyclical that you'll find their stuff in big 18-wheeler rigs, maybe even uh big trucks, F-350 and up on the Ford line, and some really, really built up Silverados. John Deere, John Deere at a 52-week high. I mean, that's impressive. Federal Express, UPS had great earnings. I don't know if it was on the list today, but it's been on it a lot. Uh, United Health and Humana, clearly some stocks in the healthcare field have been acting well. Rollins Inc., Roper, Fastenal, those are just, I mean, these are just nuts and bolts, no pun intended with Fastenal, but these are nuts and bolts industrial companies that make, like, widgets and up. And to see that they are on the 52-week high list tells me that, that there's a lot of industrial companies out there that are ordering. They're ordering components. Fortune Brand Home Security, that makes a lot of sense. So Fortune Brands used to be, they made a lot of kitchen cabinets. They were kind of diversified, and then they split. And one of the companies is Home Security, kind of like ADT. I got to think a lot of people are buying home security systems with all the craziness that's going on in not just in the urban areas, but branching out into some of the suburbs and stuff. I can see where the home security companies are doing very well. And ADT was on the new high list a couple times a week ago. Home Depot, I mentioned it. Lowe's is on there also. Illinois Tool Works, there's another just, you know, that's just an elbow grease industrial tool maker. Lennar, a home builder. Lowe's, mentioned it. Masco, building products. Meritage Homes, kind of a not your most well known um, home builder, but a very good company from what I understand. Pitney Bowes, I mean, a company that just has done over the last 20 years, used to make like stamp machines. So you would think that they could have been almost ready for the graveyard. Clearly, they've re-engineered themselves a couple of times. Otis International, I'm sure that's Otis Elevator. I mean, that would mean, I'm surprised to see that on the new high list. Target, the retailer. Rockwell, Train, air conditioning manufacturer, almost as consistent with the Carrier. Although I think Train has a lot more industrial buildings. Carrier is probably a little bit more homes. United Rentals. Now, United Rentals is a fascinating company, and I have always thought that United Rentals is a great secret indicator of industrial activity, because they rent stuff. They rent like any piece of equipment a big contractor would need. If the contractor doesn't have it in stock at a location where he needs it, he's going to rent it most likely from United Rentals. Okay? Where you and I, if we needed to rent a tool that we didn't have, like a floor sander, or even you name it. Okay, we would go either to maybe to Home Depot. A lot of Home Depots have pretty nice rental um, LK little departments off to the side, or maybe we'd go to Taylor Rentals uh, and rent, what we needed. And you can rent a lot of stuff there. But if you're a contractor, whether you're Bechtel, or whether you need an off-road dump truck that has 12-foot tall tires on it, that each weigh 2,000 pounds, or whether you need scaffolding for an 80-story building, or cranes to go on top of the 80-story building, front end loaders, earth movers, graders, etc., etc., etc. That's what United Rental does, and they do it all over the globe. And they are, for a lot of market strategists, they watch the stock United Rentals as a indicator of industrial activity. The stock's at a 52-week high. I have not been following it the last few weeks. Frankly, I'm shocked. WR Granger, Neil, WR Granger at a 52-week high. Big industrial company, Granger. Whirlpool fits in with the home building, home addition, home improvement um, theme. Williams Sonoma. I don't know how much online business they do, but they must be selling lots of nice looking dishes and plates and everything else that they sell. They sell nice looking stuff. Masonite International. I don't want to bore everyone with that, but you know what? I just find it fascinating to look at the list. I noticed there were a little over 100 names on the list. It's certainly not to the point where I'd be worried that we're getting frothy. That if that new 52-week high list gets well up above like 450 for 2 or 3 days, I'd start to like raise my eyebrows a little bit. If it got up to like 600 names on it day after day, I'd say, you know what, we're vulnerable here for a pullback. We're nowhere near that. There were 100 and change names on the 52-week high list today. So I don't have a whole lot else today. We are going to have some economic data. We had a JOLTS report today. There were 5.8 million jobs to be posted. That was up maybe a few 100,000 from the previous report. A lot of that is a mismatch on just either skills or geography. But the JOLTS number was up. When we were really cooking, even though the unemployment was very, very low, that JOLTS number was above 7 million. So it's heading in the right direction. We're going to get a PPI number tomorrow. It's become a very, very predictable number, except for in times of the coronavirus total economic shutdown, when people are intrigued over how volatile some of these numbers that used to be, plus 1/10, plus 2/10, how volatile they can get. CPI on Wednesday. We'll also get a National Federation and Independent Business survey tomorrow. It'll be out very early in the morning. It'll be interesting to see if the small business forum, if they are, how positive they are, how negative they are, how cautious they are, what some of the comments are. It'll be worth taking a look at. CPI on Wednesday, of course, weekly claims on Thursday, a whole bunch of stuff on Friday, retail sales, productivity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of all I have. I mean, we had a lot of follow-up comments in the media from some political people, from some Congress people about the Trump 4 executive orders that he signed. I think it's going to take a couple comments from Mnuchin that, it may take a week or two for that employment stuff to come through. But if it doesn't come through, if it doesn't get plugged in right away, we'll do it retroactive. We want it to be effective for August 1st. A couple of the governors, well, we can't afford that, blah, 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 blah. We'll just see how that all works out. And we're going to look for more progress on having the economy take this next leg. I mean, the market has made a V-shaped recovery, as astounding as it might be for most people. The economy's made, I would say, 60% of that upwardly sloping V. Maybe it's, needs to pause and rest for a little bit. but we need the schools to open. There was a story about schools opening in big parts of Florida this week. That's when schools open in the South in the second or third week of August. Obviously, in the Northeast and probably in the Midwest, schools open either just before or just after Labor Day, depending on where it falls on the calendar. Cuomo has said the schools can open up here. It is critical to get the economy back to taking that next leg of expansion on the economy. You got to get people back to work, and you got to get the schools open to get the largest number of people back to work. So we'll look for more headlines on that. And, this was Monday, August 10th. If you have not subscribed yet to the Anderson Report, my YouTube channel, please subscribe. Hit the little bell next to it to get notifications on when the next show will be. It will most likely be tomorrow at the same time. And please hit the like button on the show if you like it. And if you know people that you think might like the broadcast, I try to keep it to 40 minutes. It's also always accessible to be watched after the fact. I'm also on Periscope. That channel is TJ Anderson 12. And my Twitter handle is TJ Anderson 1. I usually have updates and comments on the market during the day. Okay, I really want to thank everyone for the support and enjoy the rest of your Monday evening. And we'll got to see if this rotation that we've got in the market continues through the remainder of the week. Have a nice night, everyone.